What would you do if your parents stole $300,000 in your name? I wish that was a dramatic exaggeration. It wasn't. I was 24 years old. I had just signed a lease on my first warehouse. My eco-packaging startup, the thing I built from my dorm room with $600 and a borrowed laptop, was finally growing. Slowly. Carefully. Honestly. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. And then at 6:42 a.m., my phone buzzed. New credit inquiry. I blinked at the screen. I hadn't applied for anything. Not a credit card. Not a car loan. Not a line of credit. Nothing. Still half asleep, I opened my banking app, expecting some glitch. Maybe marketing spam. Maybe a soft pull. It wasn't. There it was. $300,000 business loan. Approved. Primary borrower, Daniel Martinez. Cosigner, Ava Martinez. Signed digitally. My name. My social security number. My credit. 3 weeks ago. The air left my lungs so fast I thought I might pass out. I stared at the word cosigner like it would rearrange itself into something harmless. It didn't. $300,000. Do you know what that does to a 24-year-old's credit profile? It doesn't just dent it. It owns it. It controls it. It defines it. And I hadn't signed a single thing. My first thought wasn't anger. It was confusion. There had to be some mistake. Maybe my dad listed me as a reference? Maybe it was pending? Maybe. Then I saw the status. Funds disbursed. 3 weeks ago. That meant the money was already gone. Transferred. Used. Spent. I sat up in bed so fast my chest hurt. I opened the full loan details. Fixed term. 7 years. 8.9% interest. Monthly payment, $6,482. I did the math automatically. That's nearly $78,000 a year in payments. More than my rent. More than my payroll some months. More than I paid myself. And legally, if payments stopped, I was equally responsible. I hadn't even told my parents I was planning to apply for my own expansion loan later this year. I was waiting until my revenue stabilized. I was careful. Strategic. My credit score was 782. Then my phone buzzed again. 18 missed calls. All from Dad, Mom, home. My stomach twisted. They knew I saw it. And suddenly the confusion started turning into something colder. How do you digitally sign a $300,000 federal business loan without the cosigner knowing? How do you pass identity verification? How do you upload tax returns you don't own? Unless you've had access for years. Flashbacks started lining up in my head in ways I didn't like. My dad helping me open my first bank account at 17. My mom insisting she keep copies of my tax returns just in case. My dad always saying, family builds together. What's yours is ours. At the time, it sounded supportive. Now it sounded strategic. I opened my credit report. Hard inquiry. Commercial loan account opened. Balance, $300,000. First payment due 12 days ago. Status, late. Late. My chest tightened. If it was already late, my score was already taking damage. Which meant something else. They hadn't told me because they never planned to. Not before the money cleared. Not before they secured it. Not before it was too late. I clicked into the documents section. There it was. My digital signature. Timestamp, 11:14 p.m. 3 weeks ago. I checked my calendar. That night I was at dinner with Ethan, celebrating landing my biggest wholesale client yet. I remember because I spilled wine on my white blazer and laughed about how clumsy success felt. While I was laughing over pasta, someone in my childhood home was signing a $300,000 loan in my name. I felt heat rising behind my eyes. Not tears. Not yet. Just shock. My phone buzzed again. Dad. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened the bank's fraud department page. Report identity theft. The button sat there. Simple. Clean. One click. But that click would do more than freeze a loan. It would trigger an investigation. It would bring legal scrutiny. It could bring criminal charges. Against my father. Daniel Martinez. 52. The man who taught me how to ride a bike. Who used to check under my bed for monsters. Was he the monster now? Or was I about to become the villain of my own family? My thumb hovered over the screen. If I pressed it, there was no undo. No quiet family meeting. No private resolution. This would become official. And once it became official, it would never be the same again. Behind me, my phone kept lighting up. 18 missed calls. And I realized something that made my stomach drop even further. They weren't calling to apologize. They were calling because they were afraid of what I might do next. I stared at the button. Report identity theft. If I pressed it, everything would explode. If I didn't, everything might collapse anyway. I took a slow breath. And that's when I decided to finally answer my father's call. But what he said in the first 30 seconds changed everything. They didn't deny it. That's the part that still haunts me. When I finally answered my dad's 21st call, I expected shouting, panic, maybe even a desperate excuse about identity theft. Instead, his voice was calm. Too calm. Ava, he said, like we were discussing Sunday dinner. We were going to tell you. Not, what are you talking about? Not, there must be a mistake. We were going to tell you. I felt something cold settle in my chest. You forged my signature, I said. Silence for half a second. Then he exhaled sharply. It's not forgery. Your family. Family. Tell me something. If someone drains your bank account but shares your last name, does that make it okay? I gripped my phone tighter. You took out a $300,000 loan in my name. It's for the business, he replied. For us. For us. That word echoed louder than the dollar amount. My father, Daniel Martinez, 52, had run a construction supply company for nearly 2 decades. Growing up, I thought he was unstoppable. Contractors respected him. He walked through lumber yards like he owned the air. But the past 2 years? I knew things were slower. Supply chain issues. Inflation. He'd complained about clients paying late. Still, $300,000? You didn't even ask me, I said. We didn't want to stress you out while you were building your little startup. Little startup. The company I built from nothing. The one that paid my own bills. My chest tightened. You digitally signed my name. It's paperwork, he snapped. You're acting like I robbed you. I didn't answer right away. Because technically, he had. Before I could respond, my mom's voice came through the speaker. Lydia Martinez, 49. Softer. Strategic. Ava, honey, calm down. Your dad just needed a strong cosigner. The bank required it. You have excellent credit. We're proud of that. Proud enough to use it without asking. We're making the payments, she added quickly. This won't affect you. I opened the loan portal while she was talking. Payment history. First payment due 12 days ago. Status, late. Late fee, $487. I felt my stomach drop through the floor. You're already behind, I said quietly. Dad paused. It's a timing issue. Cash flow. That's not what you said. It's 12 days, Ava. Don't be dramatic. Don't be dramatic. Let's talk about dramatic. A $300,000 obligation attached to my social security number isn't dramatic? Do you know what happens if a loan like that defaults? The bank doesn't politely wait. They pursue whoever they can collect from. Cosigner means equal responsibility. They can garnish wages. Place liens. Sue. And at 24, trying to secure investor confidence, a defaulted commercial loan would destroy everything. How did you even pass verification? I asked. Silence again. That hesitation was louder than shouting. We had your information, my dad finally said. We've always handled family paperwork. That's when it hit me. They had copies of my tax returns, my social security card, even my old driver's license scan from when I renewed at 21. I remembered my mom saying, leave the documents here. It's safer. Safer for who? I scrolled deeper into the loan file. Digital signature timestamp, 11:14 p.m. IP address location, my parents' home. 3 weeks ago. While I was celebrating landing my biggest wholesale client. They were upstairs, signing my name. You didn't think I'd check my credit? I asked. Dad's tone shifted. Slight irritation creeping in. Why would you? You're not applying for anything. That's when I realized something terrifying. They assumed I wouldn't notice. They assumed I wouldn't look. They assumed I'd just exist as a resource. Ava, my mom said softly, this is temporary. Once the business stabilizes, we'll refinance and remove you. Refinance with what credit if they keep missing payments? You should have told me, I said. We were going to, Dad repeated. When? Another silence. That silence answered everything. They weren't going to tell me. Not until they had to. Maybe not ever. And then my father said something that shifted the ground beneath me. You wouldn't report your own father, right? It wasn't a question. It was a warning wrapped in disappointment. Family loyalty versus legal reality. Blood versus federal fraud. I didn't respond. Because in that moment, something inside me cracked, not loudly, but permanently. I ended the call. No goodbye. No screaming. Just silence. Then I reopened the fraud reporting page. The cursor blinked. Report identity theft. One click. But now it wasn't just about money. It was about something deeper. If they were already late on the first payment, what else weren't they telling me? And as I stared at the screen, my phone buzzed again. A new email notification from the bank. Subject line. Additional documents required. That's when I realized. The loan file wasn't the only thing with my name on it. And what I discovered next would make $300,000 look small. The bank told me something my parents didn't know I'd find. That email notification wasn't random. Additional documents required. For a loan I never applied for. I opened it immediately. It wasn't asking me for documents, it was confirming that verification had already been completed. Completed. My heart started pounding again. I called the bank's fraud department before I could second-guess myself. After 3 menu options and a 5-minute hold that felt like an hour, a calm male voice answered. Fraud investigations. This is Howard Kim. Howard Kim. 58, measured. Professional. No emotion in his tone. I swallowed. I need to ask about a business loan that was opened with me listed as cosigner. He asked for my information. Verified my identity. Real verification this time. Then he asked the question that made everything feel official. Are you alleging identity theft, Ms. Martinez? Alleging. Such a sterile word for something so personal. I didn't sign it, I said carefully. There was typing on the other end. Steady. Methodical. According to our system, he said, the cosigner verification was completed via phone call. My body went still. Phone call? Yes. The cosigner confirmed identity, date of birth, and the last 4 digits of their social security number. I felt the room tilt. That wasn't me. Another pause. More typing. The number used ended in 4421. I closed my eyes. That was my old number. Disconnected 2 years ago. Which meant someone updated my contact information before applying. How long before the application was my number changed? I asked. 1 week prior. 1 week. This wasn't last-minute panic borrowing. This was preparation. Careful. Deliberate. Planned. My hands started shaking, but my voice stayed steady. Who changed it? I can't disclose that without a formal fraud claim. There it was again. The line in the sand. File it, and this becomes a case. Don't file it, and this becomes your responsibility. Can you tell me what documents were uploaded? I asked. Your 2024 tax return. A scanned copy of your driver's license. Proof of address. Proof of address. My current address? No, he said. The address listed matches the primary borrower's residence. My parents' house. They used their address. Which meant official mail about the loan would go to them. Not me. Do you see how layered that is? They didn't just sign my name. They redirected the paper trail. I thanked Howard and hung up, but my mind was racing faster now. If they changed my phone number once, what else had they touched? I pulled my full credit report. Not just the summary. Every inquiry. Every account. And that's when I saw it. 8 months ago. Business equipment financing inquiry. $12,000. Application withdrawn. I never saw that notification. Because at the time, I was knee-deep in supplier contracts and barely checking anything beyond monthly statements. They tested it. That's what it felt like. They tested my credit first. Small. Safe. No reaction. So they escalated. I called Ethan. 26, software engineer. Logical to a fault. I laid everything out. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that cut straight through the emotional fog. This wasn't desperation. This was strategy. That word hit hard. Strategy requires foresight, planning, confidence. They weren't panicking. They were leveraging me. I opened public business records for my dad's company. I wish I hadn't. County tax lien filed 4 months ago, $94,000. Supplier lawsuit pending. Online reviews dropping. The business wasn't just struggling. It was sinking. And a sinking business doesn't ask politely for help. It grabs whatever floats, including its daughter. My chest felt tight again, but this time it wasn't shock. It was clarity. They didn't come to me because they knew I might say no. So they removed the option. That evening, I drove to their house. The same house where I'd grown up. The same kitchen where my dad used to quiz me on multiplication tables. He was sitting at the table when I walked in. Calm again. Too calm. You talked to the bank, he said flatly. Yes. Mom stood by the sink, arms crossed. You're overreacting, Dad added. Did you change my phone number in the loan application? I asked. Silence. Mom answered instead. It was just easier. Easier. You committed federal fraud, I said. Dad's chair scraped against the tile as he stood up. I built everything you have, he shouted. There it was. The entitlement beneath the calm. As if my credit score was a family asset. As if my adulthood was a branch of his. If you report this, he said, voice low now, controlled, you destroy this family. Destroy. Such a heavy word. But standing there, looking at the paperwork on the table, paperwork with my forged signature, I realized something chilling. The destruction had already started. They just expected me to carry it quietly. And as I drove home that night, my phone buzzed again. Another email from the bank. Subject line. Pending applications review. Plural. That's when my stomach dropped for the second time that week. Because $300,000 might not have been the full number. And what I uncovered the next morning would make this feel like the beginning, not the peak. The investigator called back the next morning, and everything changed. I hadn't slept well. My mind was a storm of numbers, emails, timestamps, and the weight of betrayal. Ethan sat across from me at the kitchen table, sipping coffee silently, letting me process. The bank's message from the previous night still glowed on my laptop screen, pending applications review. I called Howard Kim first thing. Ms. Martinez, he said calmly. We reviewed the loan files more closely. There's something you should know. I sat up straighter. Go on. During verification, he explained, we noticed anomalies in the IP addresses used to submit the loan applications. Anomalies. Red flags. My pulse jumped. The IP address used for the $300,000 business loan, he continued, matches the one used for 2 additional pending applications. I felt my stomach sink. Pending applications? How much? One, he said slowly, was a $75,000 SBA line of credit. The other, $42,000 in equipment financing. I did the math in my head. $300,000 plus $75,000 plus $42,000. $417,000. $417,000. All under my name. All without my knowledge. I closed my eyes and let it sink in. This wasn't just a desperate measure. This was escalation. A systematic leveraging of my credit. My identity. My future. I called Ethan. His voice, calm and logical, sliced through my panic. This is bigger than we thought. They weren't just borrowing. They were experimenting. And now they're going full scale. I stared at the laptop, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. One click could submit the official fraud report. It would freeze the $300,000 loan. But what about the others? Would it freeze them too? Howard advised filing immediately. The sooner you report, the stronger your case, he said. Delaying increases your liability. Liability. That word pressed down like a boulder on my chest. I'd just started my business. I had investors expecting growth, payroll to manage, contract signed. My credit had been a shield I'd built meticulously. Now it was a weapon pointed at me. I drove back to my parents' house later that afternoon. I needed one final confrontation. I needed to see it in their eyes. Dad was in his recliner, reading the newspaper. Mom was in the kitchen, pretending to bake. I didn't need to ask if they knew why I was there. "I know everything," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor I felt inside. Dad looked up. His expression was unreadable for a moment, then he sighed. "You're overreacting. You're escalating. You're using my credit, my identity. It's not a misunderstanding. It's planned." Mom stepped forward. "Ava, we did it for the family. To stabilize things. You'll understand one day." I felt the betrayal like a physical weight. I remembered the nights I'd stayed up crunching numbers, planning every dollar, every shipment, every payroll. They had taken all of that, assumed control, and expected me to say thank you. "I won't," I said quietly. "I won't understand. And I won't let you gamble my future for yours." Dad's face hardened. "You were going to inherit the business anyway. This is how families operate." That was when it clicked. This wasn't desperation. This wasn't poor judgment. This was entitlement. They believed blood justified bypassing the law, bypassing my consent, bypassing my life. I pulled out my phone, my hand shaking. The cursor blinked at the fraud reporting page. I could submit it. Freeze the loans. Start the investigation. Make it official. Mom gasped. "You can't." "Yes," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I can. And I will." They froze. And for the first time, the power shifted. Later that night, at home, I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over the Submit Fraud Claim button. Ethan sat beside me, quietly supportive. I pressed it. The confirmation page blinked. Case number issued. Loans frozen. Investigation initiated. I exhaled, but relief was short-lived. The emails started immediately. Confirmation, documentation requests, verification notices. My parents were now part of a federal investigation. The next few days were surreal. My parents stopped calling. Silence replaced the constant stream of missed calls and pleading voicemails. Family text messages poured in, some accusing me of betrayal, others cautiously supportive. I realized something. Pressing that button didn't just freeze loans. It froze the world I thought I knew. My family, my past, everything. I reviewed the loan portal again. The $300,000 loan was frozen, the $75,000 line of credit and $42,000 equipment financing now marked investigation pending. I had done it. I had protected my credit. But the cost was steep. Not in dollars. In trust. In relationships. In innocence. I sat back and reflected. My childhood home, the place I'd run through as a kid laughing, now felt alien. The lessons about trust, family loyalty, love, they collided violently with reality. And in that quiet, after the chaos of calls, emails, and confrontation, I understood the truth. Family doesn't grant immunity. Blood doesn't erase consequences. That night, as I powered down my laptop, one thought lingered. They thought I'd never notice. They were wrong. But what came next would test everything I thought I knew about loyalty, justice, and the line between love and survival. The day after filing the fraud claim felt like waking up in a world I didn't recognize. My parents' names were now attached to federal investigations. My phone, once buzzing nonstop with pleading calls, sat silent. Silence was both a relief and a hammer on my chest. I opened my laptop first thing in the morning. The $300,000 loan was frozen. The additional $75,000 SBA line of credit and $42,000 equipment financing were flagged for investigation. The bank confirmed my credit would not be impacted while the case was ongoing. Relief surged, but it was complicated by the realization that my family had crossed a line I never thought they would. Emails from my parents came through, carefully worded, apologetic in tone but full of guilt manipulation. "We only wanted to help. We thought it was temporary. You'll understand one day." They believed they were still in control, still the parents who know best, but in reality, everything had shifted. Extended family began messaging as well. Some accused me of betrayal. Others whispered quietly, wondering if I had done the right thing. I didn't respond. There was no need. The law, not my family's perception, now governed what happened next. I scheduled a meeting with Sonia Patel, the family attorney. She laid out the options clearly. I had acted correctly, swiftly, and legally. The longer I had waited, the more liability I would carry. Filing the fraud claim didn't just protect my credit, it protected my future business, my livelihood, and my independence. Sonia explained the likely outcomes. My father could face criminal charges for identity theft and fraud, though civil settlements were often preferred. The bank had to follow federal guidelines to protect cosigners. And most importantly, I was legally absolved. She said it plainly, "You did the right thing." I didn't feel vindicated. I felt hollow. The people who were supposed to be my safe harbor had become the source of potential ruin. I realized that trust, once broken in such a calculated way, leaves a permanent scar. I took a long walk to clear my head. The city felt different. Every storefront, every street corner, every business I passed reminded me of the fragility of trust. I thought about my warehouse, my employees, my suppliers. The stress of the loans being real and their potential consequences weighed on me. But it was also a reminder that I could fight back and I could win. 3 weeks later, the bank confirmed that the $300,000 loan had been fully removed from my credit report. The other 2 pending applications were canceled. My credit score, though slightly shaken, was intact. Civil agreements were drafted for my parents to repay what they had misused from the business account. The business itself dissolved, and my father's personal assets were placed on a structured repayment plan. I visited my childhood home one last time. The house was being listed for sale. Dad didn't hug me. Mom didn't make eye contact. There was no shouting, no tears, just quiet collapse. The house smelled faintly of old wood and dust, of memories and loss. It was the physical representation of the family I once knew and the one I had irrevocably lost. I reflected on the lessons that this ordeal had carved into my life. Trust is precious, but it cannot override legality. Family love cannot erase responsibility. Silence, when it protects wrongs, becomes complicity. I realized that love does not excuse manipulation, and loyalty should never mean sacrificing your own future. The most painful part wasn't the money. It wasn't even the betrayal. It was the realization that people you love, people who raised you, shaped you, and taught you right from wrong, could make choices that endanger everything you worked for. And they assumed you wouldn't notice. Yet, I did notice. Pressing that button, submitting the fraud claim, was the hardest decision of my life. It felt like tearing my own family apart. But I knew that not pressing it would have cost me everything. My business, my credit, my future, and ultimately my independence. I returned to my office, the warehouse, the place I had fought so hard to build. It smelled of cardboard, ink, and ambition. My employees smiled at me, oblivious to the personal storm I had weathered. For the first time in weeks, I felt a measure of calm. I had reclaimed my life, my choices, and my boundaries. I thought back to the opening moment, the bank alert, the loan approval, the digital signature I never gave. The fear, the anger, the betrayal. Everything had led to this: clarity, action, and survival. So I ask you, watching this, what would you do if someone you trusted, someone who raised you, who loved you, crossed that line? Would you stay silent? Protect them at the cost of your own future? Or would you do what I did? I chose my future. And the lesson is clear: family can fail you. People you love can betray you. But your life, your credit, your business, those are yours to protect. Always. They thought I'd never notice. They were wrong.